My understanding is that board governance is not like we're here because we know we need to be here. Maybe not so much like we're excited about board governance. I was just thinking, I doubt there's one person that we've worked with in ministry that has said that I got into ministry so I could have a board, so I could run a board meeting. So I mean, it's a necessary thing, and it seems like, I'm going to say it, I think the devil's kind of kiped the conversation around boards and board governance to have it be like, God help you if you missed a church meeting because you would get appointed to a board, like it was just the thing that you did because you had to do it. And I want to turn the tables on that today a little bit. And so I think before I pray, let's just go ahead and maybe do some quick introductions. Maybe just share who you are, the mission you're with, and maybe contextually, like what's your relationship with your board? What's your role, and potentially even, and I'll stop after this. Maybe any questions or frustrations or something you want to see covered. And my much better half Anna's going to keep track of this for us. Yes, so that we don't miss anything. So, Chris, let's start with you.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Chris Haynes. I'm on the board of Family Hope, a family preservation ministry in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I have the role of secretary. I
Okay.
also am a ministry lead for Christian Businessmen's Connection, and we just formed a board. But
Yes.
it's all informal, so I didn't hire a board consultant and things of that nature. So, and if both boards are kind of casual, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I have a analytical mind. And I do, so to me, I'm like, oh, so I'm coachable. I don't want to require things that aren't required, but certain things are required if you got to meet compliance. So,
Right. Right.
That's kind of.
Yeah. Ann and I are such we think of you guys as heroes, like just the work that you do, the idea of family preservation. It is, I mean, God is family, like the closeness to the scriptures, to the gospel of what y'all are doing. It's so relational. When we take it to like the board, how can we have like a relational board that is still kind of buttoned down?
Right.
That is still kind of getting things in order, doing it in a reasonable fashion. I don't know if anybody's ever sat on a school board. I mean, God help you. It's like 6-hour board meetings where we're like trying to do everything to everybody all the time. So we'll try to kind of strike this balance, like on how to really make it be meaningful and still get things done. So thanks, Chris. Yes.
Well, I'm from North Carolina. I'm Susan Kirby, and I'm here with a church group.
Okay.
Just looking at joining with Upstream, implementing family preservation in our church. We've been trying to open a maternity home, so we keep hitting a lot of roadblocks. So I'm not a part of any board.
Okay.
I've been on with them about a year, so I'm tagging along. We are just learning. So there's 4 of us, and we're just spreading ourselves out.
Awesome.
Learn all we can learn.
Thanks for making the effort. That's great. Thanks. And you want to go ahead?
Gosh, I agree that we see you guys as just heroes. Just the family preservation, and it's beautiful. And I appreciate you. But our board, we have a pretty relaxed board, and it's, I don't know, since learning about this, just appreciate that boards can be creative. It can be dynamic and kind of fun at the same time.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Great. This is my wife, Ann. So, yes. Okay, yeah. Bonnie.
So Bonnie Doolittle, I have 2 hats that I'm in here.
Okay.
I feel like that's the way it is in ministry, right?
Yes.
So
Only 2? Yeah.
I'm the founder and executive director of New Mercies Ministries in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And it's a child hosting ministry currently. We're looking to add supportive housing soon. Doing my capital campaign. That's just so much fun. I have a active, and my board is really great. They lack in fundraising a little bit.
Okay.
They lack in connecting me. So I made a huge mistake when I set my board up and not inviting somebody with fundraising experience.
Okay,
Duh.
okay.
But I, was new at the time.
Uh-huh.
But I have an awesome chair, an awesome board. They do really good with the governing part of things.
Good.
The not overreaching. I would just like to be, I just would like a little more connectivity to,
Yeah.
funders.
Yeah.
My other hat, I'm the treasurer of the board for Upstream Collaborative, and one of the founding, I'm part of the F board, if anybody's heard that term. The four of us kind of started this whole thing.
Infamous, not famous. Infamous.
Yeah.
Love that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, F seems to stand for a lot of different things when you're talking about that. But anyway, that board is very different than my board with Newmers.
Okay.
In that it's fun and dynamic. Not that mine's not fun, but it's very serious when we're in a board meeting.
Yeah.
You know you're in a board meeting.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know you're in a board meeting when you're in Upstream's board.
Now we're getting recorded. I just want to let you know that. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
No,
Hi,
it's
come on
fun
in.
and dynamic.
Yeah, it's great.
We're figuring ourselves out. We're figuring out our cadence, our culture, all of that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Any particular questions or things you want to make sure we cover today, or just here to
No, I'm
soak it in?
just here to see what I can do better on either side.
Yeah.
Directing, helping my board, and then also just helping to form the culture with the Upstream board.
Great. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff Nitz, I'm with 518 Family Services, formerly Patrick Henry Family Services. We rebranded here last May 18th. And to become 518 from 2 Corinthians 5:18, which is about, we've been reconciled to God through Christ, and now we are given the ministry of reconciliation. We used to be a group home organization. We did a lot of group homes in the Lynchburg, South Central Virginia area. And we've transitioned entirely to be upstream preventative services.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's our focus exclusively at this point.
Yep.
Our board, I serve as the COO, and our CEO is going to be transitioning back, not away. He's going to serve as CEO Emeritus. So our board is dealing with that right now.
Okay.
It's a long engaged board. We have a lot of folks who've been there for years. It's kind of just assumed you'll re-up every year. And that's a good and bad thing, right? So you get some people that are, boy, you should have transitioned off a while ago.
Yeah.
But there's deeply committed people, and there's people that do it just because of the status, right?
Yeah.
Because, in our area in Lynchburg, a lot of people know that organization.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's one of the things I would ask.
Okay.
I've been trumpeting term limits. I know that's a really good practice, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of buy-in. And the
Yeah.
guy who leads the organization, the chair right now, is wary of making too many waves. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's really wrestling. He's younger. He's a Gen X, actually an older millennial. And it's a lot of the folks are boomers on the board, and I think he's wary of
Oh, yeah.
making waves and hurting some people.
Sure.
So, that's
Sure.
the reality we're dealing with.
Sure.
Good
Yep.
people, don't know how to fundraise, but care about the ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Yes.
I'm Amanda. I'm with Alongside Families. We are going to be creating a local board. Right now, our board is in Charlotte.
Okay.
Our site is in Asheville. So
Okay.
we're moving towards local governance.
Uh-huh.
So I don't have a board yet, and I need to know everything.
Well, there you go. We'll get that covered. We'll get you out of here before dinner. So, no.
I want to add on to mine, just anything with succession planning too.
Okay.
Any guidance on that?
Okay. And just parenthetically, before I forget, we'll be hitting I'll be giving you a lot of tools. Ann will be giving you a lot of tools. We won't be hitting, it'll be almost like you're in a shoe store trying on shoes to see what might fit. So just know that we're available, and I'll get to my introduction in a second, but we're available to do follow-up with you guys. So, and what we do with Mission Increase, it's no charge. We're already funded. So, make sure you get our contact info on any of this that you might have questions about. So we're just doing quick introductions and maybe what's your connection to the board governance in your ministry.
Yes, I'm
Jasmine. I'm with Family Hope. I'm here because Lena wanted at least one of us to make it, and Chris is also on our board. I'm a newer member. I think I've been over a year now, and I actually started out through volunteering directly with our families and doing dance support coaching.
Gotcha.
And I'm like maybe a little over a year on the board.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thanks for being here. So I'm Wally Martinson. Ann and I work with an organization called Mission Increase Foundation. It's out of Portland, Oregon, which is really weird to have a Christian organization headquartered in Portland, Oregon. It's not the buckle of the Bible Belt, let's put it that way. But have the privilege of coming up. We say we help world changers change the world. So coming alongside you all, help you grow. Again, from a board governance standpoint, from a fundraising standpoint, from a communication standpoint, we have staff in 35 cities around the country. We have the privilege of serving in the Midwest in Ohio, but we kind of leak over in Indiana occasionally. And we work with Sagamore Institute as well in Indianapolis. So it's a privilege. And so doing this work, a little bit of my backstory, any bankers in the room? I'm a recovering banker. So, okay, so I'll let you know. But also, I was on Young Life staff, working with an advisory board there, similar to what you all have. We're with Youth with a Mission, YWAM, also known as Youth Without Any Money. And you want to talk about, like, controlled chaos, like no governance with YWAM. I mean, listening to the Holy Spirit, yes. But I mean, didn't learn a lot from that. I learned a lot from the Holy Spirit, not about board governance. But then for about 20 years, isn't it funny how like God's straight line is so crooked on our side sometimes? Like, who would have thought banking, missions work, youth work would work together? Well, it did for about 20 years. I was director of this foundation called the Nehemiah Foundation in West Central Ohio. And we had the privilege of incubating, serving, supporting about 25 different ministries. So kicking them off, getting the tree, little sapling planted in the ground straight so it grows right. Learned a lot about that. I can tell you as much what not to do as what to do, which can be very helpful sometimes. But I'm going to pray for us that God just has for us what he wants us to know. Because the truth of the matter is, and we're going to talk about this book. I don't know if anybody's seen this book before, The Board and the CEO. It's probably the best book we've read on board governance. It's by Peter Greer, who we're big fans of, and David Weekley, who is a business partner with out of Houston for years. So they talk in the book about speaking at a university with a bunch of Christian ministries, about 200 Christian ministry leaders in the room. Asked them what the number one problem was for their organization. 193 said our boards out of the 200. This is it's a big deal, how we walk through all this. And it's not something that we necessarily think about paying attention to when we get started. We get inspired to do ministry work, but now we got to govern. We got to organize this. How do we do it? So I'm going to pray for us and we'll get started. Lord, thank you for these friends. Thank you for this time. Lord, we knew in eternity past that we'd be in this room. Lord, so we trust that your Spirit would renew our hearts and minds right now. It's such a responsibility and such a gift to be able to serve and lead our missions. So, Lord, we just humbly ask that you speak to us. What's not one of you goes in one ear and out the other, and we just trust you for this, Lord. Thank you. In your name, amen. Amen. And could you hand out our first? We have a tool for you, and this is meant to be descriptive, and then it'll be prescriptive. This is really helpful one-pager that we've discovered on the 5 forms of board governance. And what we're going to ask you all to do is look at this, and as best as you can determine, and I guess you all can probably work together on this in terms of which of these 5 columns do you find yourself in regarding board governors? What is that color, do you think? Salmon? Pink? Is salmon? Am I on it? Okay. What's in salmon is what the board is responsible to do. What is in blue, I think, is what the CEO or executive director is charged with doing. What's that?
Can I just have 8 of these, please?
Yeah. We have some extras, sure. Yeah. So what we'd like you to do is, and just to be clear, the same responsibility it's the same across the page. It's just who's doing it is what's different. The titles, I kind of have a beef with a little bit because they're pretty pejorative. I mean, board is figureheads. Like that doesn't sound real cool, but it's not meant to make an opinion. It's just meant to kind of say kind of who we are. Can we take how much time do we? Can we take a couple minutes? Just look at this and see what column you're in, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about it here in a minute.
That's not right.
And maybe you can just crack that door. And if if you're representing couple ministries, go ahead and try to do it for both.
I think if it was something that we did it. Yeah. Yeah.
If you have to pick a color.
How we doing? Do we need a little bit more time? Well, I won't grade you or anything. Okay, how many of us, I'll just take a shot at this. How many of us have our board as staff? In other words, kind of the board is a working board. Anybody for that? How about board as managers, where the board's super engaged, and yet when it comes down to the day-to-day operations, that's handled by the executive director or CEO. Anybody for that? How about board as governors? Okay, Bonnie, are you doing both, or you're just doing one right now?
So New Mercies, I would say somewhere is between directing and reviewing. I was looking at the bottom.
Yep, those are good descriptors.
They're somewhere in there.
Okay,
I think Upstream is probably the same. Probably more, maybe between supervising and directing and directing and reviewing. I don't know. We're trying to get into a certain direction, but
okay.
I know we're not there yet with Upstream.
Yep, okay. How about board as advisors? Guys, that tends to be a pretty popular one where the legal responsibility always resides with the board. Now, I know in an advisory board case that's not necessarily true. In fact, it's not true. But I think what we're trying to build today is ownership. Like, how do we build more board ownership for things like fundraising? Like, how do we get everybody on the same page in terms of prioritizing what's important for the mission moving forward, where we're not bird dogging people or shaming people, or whatever it might be. So how about board as figureheads? Where do you think you guys are at?
We definitely spend most of our time more so the affirming and the endorsing.
Yeah. So here's the thing: it's not necessarily sinful to be in one of these, but the idea is like, it seems like when churches get planted or organizations get started, we tend to end up on one of the edges. It's either like a group of people get together, hey, we're planting a church, hey, we're starting Upstream Collaborative. We're a board. We don't have an executive director for Upstream Collaborative, or we don't have a church planter, staff person yet, but it's a group of us. We're called of God. We're doing the work, and then we go ahead and find somebody to do the work. The other hand, a lot of this is like God's calling an individual. What's the saying? God so loved the world, he didn't send a committee, Like the idea of like what it looks like to have an individual called and then gather a group of people around him or her to do the work, it tends to be on the figurehead side. Here's the thing. What we want to do is we do want to move towards the middle. We want to get to the board as governors as expeditiously and Holy Spirit led as possible. Again, we don't want to shove us there, but we want to aim for us to be there. in terms of like, let's, the legal responsibility resides with the board. The reason the organization exists are determined by the board. What parts of the mission do you think, like when you think of the reason the organization exists, what comes to mind for you that represents that for your mission? Will it be your mission statement, your vision statement, your belief statement, your core values? We talked yesterday in here with our fundraising time together about having a generosity statement. Like as a mission, how do we see money and giving and fundraising? Biblically, how do we see that? Those are like the core reason why we exist. But then the organizational objectives are set by the board. When we say objectives, it could be priorities, it could be outcomes, however you want to think of that. That is something that the board is. In fact, we would actually amend this. I don't have the computer capabilities to like put a diagonal line between this middle of the page. Under board as governor, organizational objectives are set by the board. We would actually say that would be part salmon, part blue. You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's something that we want to do together, the executive director and the board. Yes?
And those objectives could and should change over time.
Absolutely. Right. The reason the organization exists won't change as much, but these objectives will. Any 3-month objectives, 6-month objectives, annual objectives. Again, priorities, outcomes, it's all kind of the same thing. But why do we want that shared between the board and the executive director? What do you think?
You have to have many advisors to be successful. It's a biblical principle.
Right. Like the more the eyes that are on something, trusted eyes, the better. Real quick side story. A British magazine called Nature did a study on the accuracy of Wikipedia. Now, this was done pre-COVID, I think. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. And of course, when our kids were going to college, before that, they weren't allowed to use Wikipedia. They, not trustworthy. Well, Nature magazine wanted to see if that's still true. Turns out Nature magazine is just as accurate, I'm dating myself here, as an Encyclopedia Britannica is just as accurate.
What's that? Just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. And getting more accurate. What they're saying is that like a paid professional that is paid to study something, encyclopedia, they're really good at it, but they're not perfect at it. At the same time, if there's 100 people looking at like the Battle of Gettysburg, and they're all amateurs, that could be like all over the map. There's 1 million people looking at it that care about it. It gets darn accurate. I mean, our dentist, retired dentist, is a Civil War nut. I pity the fool who puts something up on Wikipedia that isn't accurate. I mean, this guy's a freak on this stuff. Well, we want our freaks for our mission. Like the more eyes that are on this, the better the product's going to be, the better this is going to go. So the idea of having an executive director and a group of people co-determining what these priorities or objectives are important. Yes?
You also want ownership. I mean, you don't want the board to make the decision and they go, here, you work it all out. You want to share
That's right.
ownership so they're all invested in being a part of the answer to that.
Yep.
Which just may play a role when we want them to fundraise.
Exactly. I mean, this works all ways. On Young Life staff with the Nehemiah Foundation, I would regret going into board meetings sometimes because I already am overwhelmed with my to-do list. I'm going to get 10 more things to do that they think are just great ideas. And by the way, now I'm venting a little bit. We only meet 6 times a year, and they're directing my work, and I do this thing every day. Like, how would they know what's the best thing to do? So you got that side of it. Then you got the other side. How do we get board members to own this thing? How does it become their thing? Where they're actually, you want people investing through you, not to you. Like, what's our cause? Why do we exist? We need to answer that every board meeting. What does this look like moving forward? If we start checking some of those boxes, and we'll talk about it in how to do a board meeting, I think we're gaining on it. I think we're getting on this co-ownership. So again, we're going to kind of follow this middle column model, and we're going to kind of move the conversation now to talk about how to set up and plan a board meeting based on this board as governors model, and how to actually do the board meeting itself. But any other questions or comments on this idea of board as governors? It's a pretty simple concept, but it's hard to do. I mean, it can be pretty elusive. So I don't know. Any thoughts or questions?
Real briefly, it's like the paradox of leadership, like humbly confident,
Uh-huh.
trustfully contentious. Is this really the best thing? I mean, we're all on the same mission, but it's really doing this, you know, and I think if you give one person its personal preferences, and it could be wrong, right? So I think that's why you need to trust your board, but then be willing to occasionally work out the priorities or the objectives.
Right,
Yeah.
right. This model, by the way, went horribly wrong with Columbus City Schools. I'll tell you that. Like if you Google board governance Columbus, Ohio, I cringe to see what might come up because it was a disaster. Well, it turned out they didn't have their core values. Or they might have had their core values, but they weren't practicing them. They didn't trust each other. The model we're going to talk about today, it's an intentional model. And this is why I really appreciate you guys being in the room. A lot of reasons why I do, but one of them is it's really hard to get to this space where we're working on the mission, not just in it. So as we're working on this thing, like to really have an ironclad, again, our mission, our vision, our values, our generosity statement, keep pointing to them to be the bad guy, the devil's advocate, which I hate that phrase, but the idea of what this looks like, this isn't about you or me. I mean, we would say that at every Nehemiah board meeting. If this is about us, look, you got other things to do. We don't want to waste your time. But our cause is we want to see the body of Christ come together to do things together we can't do by ourselves. The minute we get bored with saying who we are and what we're about is the minute the world starts to get it. So again, we want to really hammer this thing home with regards to how we do a board meeting. So thank you, Chris. Any other thoughts or questions on this board as governors? Makes sense, kind of where we're heading with this? And anything else? Okay, what I want to do, I'm going to draw a little bit of a schematic here. And it's going to probably look like some sort of weird hourglass. My writing is horrible. But we're gonna say our board. I know we're servant leadership people, so I mean really boards are serving the whole mission. But we're just gonna do top down for what we're gonna talk about today. If a board is set up here, and you've got, we'll just call the community down here. What I want us to think about is how do we plan our board meetings? Using this board as governors model. What we want to do is we want to honor it. So in our board meetings, we want to have three major objectives. Number one is we want to review and encourage, how do I want to say this? I'm just going to say review, I'll explain it. Review our mission and vision. We never want to miss that. And by the way, just to let you know, and because we've done this a few times, people will say, well, where is Robert's Rules of Order in all this? We don't believe in Robert's Rules of Order. Out of order. What's that? Burn them. Well, we believe in order, don't get me wrong. But we're not talking about like hearing reports from people that could be written out and read ahead of time. This isn't about reporting back. This is about engaging together. Like board meetings can be really inspirational. They can be very meaningful. Actually, board meetings can be times of disciple making. I've been rereading Matthew 28 for the umpteenth time, and there's something I'd never seen before. Jesus says, go and make disciples. I kept reading it like, go and find them. You know, like a celestial Easter egg hunt. Like, let's find these committed people that are into family preservation. I'm speaking to the choir. I know they're not. You don't find these people. I mean, occasionally got these people, but even people that you find, like the Lord's been at work in these people's lives. Like somebody has poured, you have poured into people's lives to make disciples. A board meeting can be a great place to make disciples. If we consider the first 15 minutes of our 90-minute meeting to review our mission and vision of our of the reason we exist, of our organization. What are some ways that you guys do this, or we could do this? How do we take the first 15 minutes of our meeting, instead of like approving the minutes of the last meeting and all that? We'll get to all that at the end. How do we keep people understanding the main thing when we're meeting together in a board? What are different ways that we can review our mission and vision?
We ask someone, one of the board members, the chairman asks someone on the board to read the mission.
It's awesome.
Challenge them to actually commit to memory.
Yes.
We see them trying to do that, right? That's the first thing we do. Well, prayers first.
Yeah.
We go into that.
Excellent.
And that's every single time.
Every time. In fact, you can make it a policy. Like it's something that we're always going to do.
And with Upstream, we're challenged to commit even more than the mission statement, but reading out we'll do popcorn around somebody from memory, reading off a core value.
That's impressive. That's awesome. Has anybody ever heard of the book Mission Drift?
Yes.
I mean, that is one of their number one recommendations with Peter Greer and Chris Horst. They're saying, again, the minute you get bored with this stuff is the minute your board starts to get it. So we're going to hammer that. What are other ways that we can reinforce?
We've been informed legally, like that's a protective measure.
It is, particularly when people come after you. I mean, for churches,
Religious defense.
absolutely.
That if they see in every one of your notes that you're doing these things, including open prayer, closing prayer, it's a defense. Sorry, sidetrack.
No, that's important, particularly for churches, I will say. Because churches, you'll get people inquiring, would you host a gay wedding or whatever.
It's an equally important ministry, I think, because, churches, like, you get it. Like, that's where you go to get religious instruction, whatever, that's what the secular people
Yeah.
think. But in ministry, it could be a fine line.
That's
Like,
so true. You're so right.
That's
are you really doing this, or are you just raising money to,
right. Well, and I know this movement has come out of a mission drift sort of situation. So, I mean, to ironclad this, I would candidate other ways to do this would be to videotape a testimony from a family. I would even kind of get it off of definitely do the families. Like if you're a pregnancy resource center, to interview a mom, that was inspired to save her child, wonderful. But interview a volunteer. Why are you doing this? Let's let the board members understand that that's why we're in the room today, to protect that story, what you just heard. What if you had board members share their testimonies systematically? 6 board members, you have 6 board meetings, there you go. We're each going to take a turn and share why, out of the 20 other places we could be, we're here today. And it's not because I love the executive director. You're not allowed to say that. We know you love the executive director. How has this impacted your life, being a part of this? It's also building this ownership. It's getting people more and more fired up about what's going on. Keep in mind, we're in the square at Board of Governors. Reason the organization exists are determined by the board. That's what we're doing here. We're just kind of amplifying it a little bit in terms of reviewing the mission and vision. So that's we're going to pray. We're going to take the first 15 minutes and do that. Any other thoughts or questions on that? Does it make sense to do that? Then what we're going to do is we'll call them objectives or priorities. We're actually going to determine what are 3 to 5. I'm going to stick with 3 for our time here because we don't have a lot of time. What are the 3 objectives? Now we're into organizational objectives are set by the board. We're into that third square that's bi-colored, right? It's both by the executive director and the board. we're going to determine what objectives are what would some, just think with your organizations, what are some big rocks that you have, that you know, if there's 20 things, 20 big things that we're all doing right now. But if we had to prioritize, which 3 does the board really need to focus on? Can somebody give me an example of one? Like, what are you looking at? Would the campaign be?
Yes, the campaign was, that's been
Okay. Yeah,
also this year's focus being succession planning
okay.
for
Yep.
and then strategic planning.
Okay. Let's use this. Thank you, Bonnie.
It's full of info.
What's that?
I don't mean to hog.
No, that's great. No. No, you're one of the Fab Four or whatever. No, what do you call you? Just kidding. Yeah, F4. There you go.
I'm technology keyboard F4.
Yeah, perfect. So as a mission, there's 20 things we could be focusing on in our board meeting, but we're going to pick the top 3, and because we want to make sure that these are done well, like with the organization. Now, is the board going to be doing these things in the board meeting? Are we going to be like brainstorming these in the board? Absolutely not. We'll get to that in a minute. It's very counterintuitive, but what we're determining are the objectives that need to be dealt with as an organization.
So you're just validating that is correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and if you don't have yours, you're establishing them.
Gotcha.
Once you establish them, what does it say next on that board as governors? Now it's blue. Strategies to achieve organizational objectives are developed by who?
Director or CEO?
The CEO. It's hang with me. It's the CEO's, it's the executive director's job to make sure that these are going to get done and get done well. But we're smart executive directors. We're saying, not so fast. We're all going to be involved with this. But here's what we're going to do. In fact, I'll do this in red just to be weird. The executive director is here, and he or she is going to say, okay, you guys are giving us me to set up strategies. I'm not going to do this by myself. In fact, we're going to do this together. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to set up task forces around these. And again, you can call it whatever you'd like, but literally, you're going to have work groups working on our capital campaign fundraising plan, our succession plan, and our strategic planning.
Is that like the old board committees?
Yes,
Okay.
but we don't like the word committees.
That's why.
Right. Committees seem very staid. And by the way, and committees can be commissioned and just rinse and repeat. Could these change 6 months, a year from now? Absolutely.
You're getting progress, hopefully.
Hopefully you're actually starting to check boxes like, good job, we got it done. So you might, in 2026, you might have 3 different task forces than what you have right
I
now.
just created a new one.
Okay?
So we're getting ready to move into program or supportive housing. So I launched a program development committee. We just won't call.
Your committee's fine.
But
It's all good.
I put together a group of people from the community, but I also added board.
Okay, this is good stuff. So who populates these task forces? Well, it's up to the executive director. What the executive director said is, okay, board members, if you're going to be on the board, we want you to serve on one of these task forces. Now, when you're serving on a task force, this is a little weird, potentially controversial, and what the book is recommending for us, not the Bible, but I like the idea behind it. Board members are only board members during board meetings. Gavel hits, put on your board hat. We are governing for the next 90 minutes. After we get done governing, board meeting's over, gavel hits, we take off our board hat. What hat do we keep on? Our champion hat, our all-in hat. our testimony hat. The whole idea is that we want to make sure that we're getting buy-in here. Who else are we going to be inviting? Guess what? This is where the community comes in. Have you ever had that, like, and Bonnie, I'll pick on you, like we're getting ready to do a capital campaign, so we have to have a fundraiser on our board. I completely understand that, but you know what? In this model, you kind of don't have to. Because if you're asking somebody to be on the board, they got to govern. You don't need a lawyer on your board. You don't need an accountant on your board. You need your accountant to help do the work. I mean, you can have a secretary, you can have a treasurer, but this idea of populating the board with professionals that don't care a lot as much about this as you do, we would say is a mistake. Who do we want in this room, in the boardroom? All chips in people. We're not trying to entertain, trying to get people jazzed about the mission in the boardroom. They're already jazzed. They're already fired up about this thing. Now, I realize this is perfect world stuff. And do you have that? Oh, no, I think I might have it here. There's one other thing we're going to talk about here in a second, but you're also going to have, by the way, staff are involved here too. You can have staff. In fact, we would recommend you have staff if you have more than one staff. Staff on the task force as well. Do staff have to be at all the board meetings? Nope. But if this work group, okay, so we'll finish the loop here. So the board reviews the mission and vision, sets objectives. There's the objectives. Goes to the executive director. Executive director works on these task forces, populates them with the task force with the board, staff, and community. These groups meet. They actually get stuff done. This is the fun stuff here. This is the creative stuff. This is where you actually get like great ideas. Is there any authority with these task forces? Zero. Like all this group is doing is doing the work. Do these task forces report to the executive director of the board? Executive director. The executive director's charge all the day-to-day. In fact, a board member could be just in here as an average Joe or Josephine, like working on stuff. The work comes back to the executive director, and then the executive director talks to the board chair and says, hey, at our next board meeting, we got some exciting things going on about our objectives. These task forces are going to have some reports for us to look at and to mess with, approve, adapt. The board approves the work because the work's coming from the executive director. How many employees do the board have? One. The executive director but the executive director is also building ownership here along the way. Blah, blah, blah. What do you think? Questions? Yes, Ann.
Well, that leads to the third.
It does. I'm going to get to that one in a second.
Great.
All right, well, there's one more thing that happened. By the way, in the board meeting, this is 15 minutes. This is like an hour. Like the board in the CO book says, as an executive director, you should be talking at the meeting less than 25% of the time. That is a challenge. In fact, if it's my book, 40% is okay.
Wait, say that again?
In a board meeting, a board governance meeting, the executive director should be talking about a quarter of the time.
I'm really glad you say that because my chairman shushes me all the time and drives me nuts.
Well, who should be talking in these meetings when you're talking about objectives? The chair of these task forces. I mean, now, Bonnie, you can.
About the board meetings.
I am too. I'm talking about in the board meeting. What if you had the chair of these three groups reporting in on these objectives, so you didn't have to?
And hopefully a board member is gonna be in each of those task force processes.
And they could report in as well. You're just trying to get it off you, Bonnie. That's kind of what we're trying to do here.
I just feel like I need to say everything I know.
I completely get it.
But I'm glad you said that because it makes me feel like, okay, that's how it's supposed to be, not.
But just to interject too, because everyone wants to feel heard and seen, and I know as a director, you're like, I gotta validate what we're doing.
Right,
But then the board members are like, well, why am I even here?
right.
From their point of view, and I wanna chime in to make sure that you guys know I'm valuable.
Well, the chairman wants to hear from them, not necessarily me, and I think that's why he does it too. Drives me nuts.
But it will build ownership. There's no doubt about that. The third part, and then Ann, you can we actually have a little bit, the handout didn't work out quite right, but I think you guys will get the drift. One is to encourage, the third part is to encourage and support the executive director. This is when the executive director talks. In fact, I would even candidate that as before the priorities, where you talk about your mission and vision, and then, Bonnie, you give your dashboard report. Here's what's happening with the mission. Here's what I'm seeing. I don't know if you guys have a dashboard or some way that you can kind of pretty effectively, without taking an hour, kind of share what's happening with the mission. And it's also an opportunity for you as the executive director to get talk about a review, or talk about, like, I'm not saying get a grade. I'm saying that I know for our board, what they would do with me is they would ask me once a year, what's my continuing ed plan for my personal growth? That I really appreciated them asking that. So there was a time for me to report back on that, how that's going. This is something that you work on with your board chair. As you're setting up your meeting, you're reviewing the mission and vision, you're getting a report from the executive director, because the board needs you as executive directors to be healthy people. This model does not work if executive directors aren't healthy people. We're people saved by grace. Grace is amazing, I know that. But we want this to be really embraced in a meaningful way. So I think, Ann, do you get it to everybody, the hourglass then? It's just, and the numbers are real weird. It's kind of hard to follow maybe, but there's a flow to this where it goes down and comes back up and through. This is a 90-minute board meeting that actually gets really meaningful. There's a lot of ownership that takes place in meetings like this. Questions, comments, pushbacks, thoughts? Yes.
How many people is ideal, like you're really starting out?
Good question.
What, tell me what I should look for specifically.
Yeah. Okay. Let's tackle first things first. How many people? Well, this is art, not science. What do y'all think? How many people is a good place, to have? How many people just when you're starting a board? What do you think?
We started with 8.
Okay, there you go. Because
Actually, no, we started with 7. In Indiana, you have to have a minimum of 3.
right, to get that's for your
At
yeah.
8 in our bylaws, it's 8 is the maximum. So we started with 7 in case we ran across somebody that we really wanted. We had room to add. Somebody has since rolled off, so now we have 2 opens.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So we thought 7. We didn't fill up completely just because we wanted to add it.
Yeah.
Found some.
Say anywhere between 5 and 11.
But if you're starting, I would think smaller.
Smaller, probably better starting.
Does it depend on how squishy your vision and mission are? Because I kind of had this hallucination that if you have too many board members and there's too much squishiness,
Yeah.
then you're fighting over why are we here and what our mission and vision is, and then you're not actually getting traction. You're
Right.
I think this is the most.
Right.
I don't know, like
Well,
bring the board on too soon.
your board is as strong as the weakest link on your board.
Okay.
So, I mean, you really, to answer the second question, you want to patrol this pretty closely. Like, you want people that love Jesus, that frankly love you, and they love this mission. We'll find the professionals later. Now, again, if there's people that are in this spot that are great fundraisers or accountants or lawyers or doctors, whatever, fine. But you want this guiding you. You want all chips in. Yeah.
Not to be distracting, but I think I've heard you say before, you might not need a board initially when you're just starting an organization. Is that true? You might need a steering committee?
first?
Well, that yeah, as you're, we believe in kind of function over form. So like as you're working, you're building something. It's board as staff. You know, I mean, you got a bunch of volunteers that are coming together to help start something. At some point, you are going to have to organize, though.
You're gonna be a 501c3.
Right. If a 501c3, there in Ohio, it's two parts. There's an article of incorporation, and then a 501c3 status with the federal government. So one's a state relationship, one's a federal relationship. And so for the articles of incorporation for the state in Ohio, you need 3. I don't know if that's how. Okay. And we're getting into the weeds a little bit, but with the IRS, you actually file a form, and they give you like a 2-year trial, where they say, hey, okay, we'll give you your 501c3 status. It used to take forever, and then a whole bunch of things. I don't know if you remember when the IRS started going after people a few years ago, and then the IRS said, all right, and the pendulum swung completely the other way. I mean, in days, you could get your 501c3.
Unless you apply during COVID.
Yeah, there you go. Yes. But the idea, we call mission increase, we call them champions. You know, people that are kind of all chips in for the mission is kind of who you're looking for to start out. It's a governance place that it can be motivation. Yeah, Jeff.
So where does the work of the board itself in its own propagation play out in that, right? So we have governance, we assess ourselves, we work on ourselves as a board, we bring in new members, we assess, right? Where does that fit?
Yeah. So
And is the last one engage and support? You know what that-
encourage. Yes. Ann, can you hand out the Nehemiah Foundation? We actually have a board job description for you guys to look at that worked out pretty well for us. The Nehemiah Foundation one.
The membership commitment.
Yeah. We actually ended up forming committees, Jeff. We were doing these task forces and realized it was rinse and repeat on some of these task forces. So we said, all right, these are going to be kind of not wet cemented. They're going to kind of be in. And one would be board development, for example. So you're nominating of board members, your board terms, all of that. What we're trying to do, so there's basically for the Nehemiah Foundation, these are some of our standing objectives. Resource development, administration, program, and board development. Those are 4 of our standing priorities that we were working on.
Say that again.
Well, they're right here.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So the expectations for each board member should be in agreement with the mission, vision, and belief statement of the Nehemiah Foundation. Give financial. Oh, this was a big one. Give financially to the foundation. As Mission Increase, we do grant making. One of the first questions we'll ask ministries is, what percentage of your board members give financially to the mission? What answer do you think we're looking for?
100%.
100%. Why would we give to you if your own board members don't give to
We're
you?
supposed to be sold out for it, right?
Isn't it about the cause? Now, we're not saying buy your seat. We're not saying everybody has to give a dollar amount. Although that's up to you how you want to do that with your mission. We just said we want you to support your local church. To be on our board, though, we'd love to be your first, not tithe, but offering. I've seen people say top 3. I've seen people not say any of that and just say just to be able to give financially. But that's I mean, you're not springing this on people after they join the board. Like, you're offering this up like this is what it looks like. Would you be interested here? Because we were like a Christian United Way in a lot of ways. They knew that we were doing fundraising when they joined the board. So we actually asked them to develop their own fundraising plan. What's your plan to do fundraising? My personal development plan. And then we kind of lay it out, potential opportunities for them to do fundraising. Pray for the foundation. That was a mistake. That probably should have been the first one, not the last one, or not the 5th one on the list. And then consider participating in one committee, my preference. We asked people for their pledge to give and pledge to raise, and we had them sign off on it. people had 3-year terms for this starting out. My board chair said, well, that's fine because it keeps things in order, but I want you to have we're going to have a conversation with every board member every year about this. That sounds like a lot of work, Larry. It's time invested, not time spent.
And also with alignment too.
And exactly, the lives happen in 3-year cycles. I mean, things can happen tomorrow. So we don't want people just here serving a term out. At the same time, we don't want people hanging in forever either. By the way, in this model, this is an awesome model for 2 things with the board. One is, where do you think we can recruit new board members from? These task forces. I mean, instead of going, gosh, who do I know? Oh yeah, they've given a lot of money recently. Maybe they're interested. I would not do that unless they're all chips in on the mission. We realize that sometimes people give big money and it's just chump change for them. Like there's a lot more where that came from. We don't want to value that. But people that are really, this is like a farm team. People are really proving themselves on these task forces. That could be somebody.
I have board members who are more excited about the task forces than they are being on the board.
You're doing something right. This is where the action takes place. This is where the governance takes place. The board is looking at these proposals and owning them and thanking the team that put it all together. Again, most of the times for school boards, they might have some of this, but they try to do it all here. It just, oh my gosh, 5 hours. I've been there, 5-hour board meetings. It's rough. But we want to have, we just wanted to lay this out as a job potential, like board commitment form. Y'all can do better, make it your own. We just ask that as a best practice, you would have something that you could show people. Yes.
I just remembered one thing we read maybe, but the idea instead of just flat out, you're in for 3 years, some people do a 1 year, then a 3 year, then a, because the 1 year, it's like proposal time. It's like, let's get to know each other. Is this still what you thought it was? Where you put your heart, And then if yes, then you can have it 3 years.
That excellent. That is out of the book. I mean, we're kind of dating before we get engaged, sort of thing. Let's try this for a year. Let's reevaluate after a year, see how it's going to go. If you're in and we're in, then we can pick up on our 3-year plan. Yep, excellent. Job descriptions for board members. Again, remember what we talked about earlier? That we're in the shoe store. We're just trying these shoes on to see what might make sense. Any thoughts or questions? Anything you all are doing as a board with regards to job descriptions that could be helpful for us? Questions, thoughts on that? Okay, we're not quite done. What happens after our board meeting? You know, the gavel hits, time to go, see you next time. Confession, I just missed a really great opportunity to disciple my board members and to build ownership and to make disciples ultimately. What if we had, and Ann, you can go ahead and hand it out. I served on this board. This is the board that kind of got a lot of stuff going in Columbus. This form was handed out at the end of every board meeting for every board member to fill out at the meeting and turn it in. Takes 5 minutes to do this. The questions we're asking. The agenda was clear, supported by the documents, and it was circulated prior to the meeting. Oh, by the way, very important. See, again, we're going to run out of time. Financial statements, when do they get sent? About a week ahead of time. They're emailed out to people. You're sitting down with your board chair and executive director, you're sitting out planning the meeting a week ahead of time, and you're sending out these financials so that you're not spending 15 minutes trying to figure out what in the world's going on in the board meeting. You're losing half the room because half the room doesn't do numbers. So how do we do, if we can get the minutes out ahead of time, if we can get the financials out ahead of time, if we can get any of these reports out ahead of time, even though just a few days ahead of time, you can do what's called a consent agenda. And at the end of the meeting, you can say, can we approve all reports? And all financials.
Rather than reading it,
Yeah.
What's that?
rather than reading it to them, we can.
No. We're going to read, and that you can even put that in your minutes, in your job description. We're asking you to read things before you come to the meeting. That doesn't seem too, they might read it like the hour before, but at least they've read it, yeah.
That's huge, like to train board members, what's your role, what's it entail, and then what's the responsibilities and expectations? Because
Yep.
most people don't know.
Yep.
aren't trained.
So you're handing, getting back to this document, you're handing this out at the end of the board meeting to have people to fill out. Let's put yourself in a board member spot, and you're at a board, and the board chair hands this out to you as a board member at the end of the meeting. What sort of messages does this give to you as a board member?
Establishing a code of excellence.
Yes.
These people mean it.
Yeah.
We're not just messing around. Like the agenda was clear and supported. Yep. The board was prepared. The board spent time with appropriate spent on ends. That ends would be objectives. That's what this organization called objectives. Each board member was given an adequate opportunity to participate. The board's treatment of all persons was courteous, dignified, and fair. The board adhered to it as adopted governance style. This is
Just put out, so who hands this out? The
the
chairman?
the board chair at the end of the board meeting. Says because and the last thing we're handing out, we killed some trees here. Sorry. Is we're handing out, and this is pretty technical, but it's actually the board chair's job description. Because that person is not a special person because they have 2 votes and everybody else has 1. It's not because they're the most influential person. They're the best referee. Like they're umpiring. They're making sure that the meeting itself goes well. If I had to summarize what's the job of the board chairman, it's to work with the executive director to plan a good meeting, and then for the board chair to run a good meeting, where you're actually using this handout at the end of the board meeting as like an accountability piece. Like if you're getting good responses from this, you've got a good board chair, and that person can switch annually, or it could be. I know for the foundation, Larry Hill, he was the board chair for 6-7 years. He's one of these freaks that kind of like this stuff, So he was in, and I learned a ton from him. So, we want.
Follow your bylaws, though.
What's that?
The limits are in the bylaws.
So that's why he had to get off. It was 2 consecutive terms, and then you had to bolt for a year. But again, where could he bolt to? It's not like see you later, Larry. He can jump in right here, and then jump back on. There's possibilities for that. Thoughts? Yes, Jeff.
So, COVID taught us that we could meet remotely and still have a meeting,
Yep.
albeit not most desirable, right?
Right.
So we have maybe a third of our board members now joining online.
Okay.
Right? Any ways that you found to keep those folks engaged?
That's a really good question.
Because it's happening, and I'm guessing most boards now have people joining online.
Yes. Quick thoughts, and then we'll scoot. We'll stick around afterwards, though. Yeah.
It's a policy that the cameras will be on, right? Things are in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
Like you're not driving, you're not,
Right.
I get you can't, but you can still set the time aside, and if not, then we need to reschedule a board meeting if you're gonna be 50%, because.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that camera's on.
Cameras on, feet on the ground.
Without, like,
Yeah.
People hopping in and out.
Yeah. Yeah. This is art, not science. I covered, I know, a lot of material, and again, we're just trying these shoes on. Don't worry about trying to do all of it all at once. But just know that, if any of this makes sense, we want to help you. We want to walk through this with you. So we do remote coaching. We do Zoom calling. See me and I can get you. Do we have calling cards? I do.
Thank you.
Also, that book is amazing by Peter Greer, the Board and CEO. There's so much in there. They offer their resources up. There's a ton in the back,
Yeah.
so that's just a great resource as well.
Yeah, this willing to stick around. It's 5:07. Bad speaker. Thank you all. Appreciate you guys. Yep. See ya.